Hello, everybody, and welcome to Age of Geek, the podcast. I'm required by the other managing partners who are not here to say the podcast to specify that you are not actually listening to Age of Geek, the website, or listening to Age of Geek, the Facebook page. This is Age of Geek, the podcast.
It could be Age of Geek, the audiobook, not
It could
on
it could
Audible.
be. Yeah, that's right. If it is Age of Geek, the audiobook, it would be on not Audible. So Uh, if you don't know what that means, well, stay tuned and we'll talk about it here in a few minutes.
It's
But
foreshadowing.
that's good. It's good foreshadowing. It's a good tease. Um, if I was your wife, Blake, I'd just ruin the tease and say what and
Yeah,
why it's a tease. But we'll wait. Keep people listening. Keep
exactly.
people listening. All right. Well, I'm here. This is Jake, and I am here with Blake and Brandon. This is kind of our book crew, and this is where we come and talk about Brandon Sanderson stuff and other book stuff. Eventually, this is our third book takes, and I feel like they've all been heavy Sanderson
I
stuff.
was thinking about that. The third book takes, I've been invited onto two of them now, and I've realized we've got uh, a Brandon Sanderson storytelling Cosmere professional. We've got a storytelling professional. I'll let you guys figure out which one's which. And and you guys bring me on here because you need a Brandon professional.
There
You
you
need
go.
somebody who understands what it's like to be named Brandon.
That that's it. That's it exactly, Brandon. That's
It's
why
all
we
of my
have you here.
qualifications. It's all of them.
And
In
and I'll
fact,
be honest,
we don't care if you've even read the books. Really.
and we didn't even ask. We're like, do you want to come and talk? We didn't even ask if you've read the books that we're going to talk about tonight. To be fair, and I hope you don't take this personally, you were not our first choice of Brandon's, but Sanderson was not available, so
And I
we
spell my name
went with you.
differently too. So
You
I
do.
don't blame you. I don't blame you.
Yeah,
It's like
Ushio's
the
totally
Walmart
different than
version.
Sanderson.
Yeah. 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 Totally different.
Ushio, it's not even. It doesn't even look the same. No, it is spelled differently, but we like that. You're original. You're unique, not the Walmart version, or the. We won't say Wish. Just sounds like it's really too big of a diss. We don't want to call you the. But welcome. We are going to talk about some Sanderson stuff because we are officially now in the year of Sanderson. That is not a name that fans coined. That is in fact a name that he coined. That's correct. He decided to name 2023 the year of Sanderson.
I pretty much
So
feel like he's now the reason we have to keep talking about him.
I know he keeps doing stuff that
Like,
we're like, okay, well, this is a big thing in books.
we can't just ignore the year of Sanderson on a book
No,
podcast. So
I agree. I
here we
agree.
are.
We have to at least address it. And we haven't talked about the Lost Metal, and that's probably where we'll start tonight because that came out the end of last year. And wait, are we doing this in the right order you wanted to do, Blake? Right? Lost
Sure.
Metal first and then okay.
You know what? Whatever feels best. And I
Let,
like it this way.
let me ask this just before any other words come out of my mouth. Where do we sit in the spoiler territory?
It's a great question. That's a great question. Some people are very conservative with the spoilers. I'm on a Facebook or part of a Facebook group where they will not let you write anything spoilery about Lost Metal until like June of this year, and I feel like that's a really long time. Um, I feel like most people that are going to care the most about spoilers have probably picked up Lost Metal already and have probably gotten into a good chunk. But we can get into medium spoilers. Like we can talk about characters and character arcs, but let's try to avoid any big reveals. Like if any characters like die, or if any characters like show up surprisingly, or anything like that, we'll
Any
keep
heel
those
turns,
out.
stuff like that?
Yeah, any heel turns, exactly. We'll keep all of that out, but we can talk about kind of some of the characters and kind of where the story takes us a little bit. Is that fair? Is that a good ground to be on?
I think I can deal with that.
That's
Okay.
fair.
And if you're going to go any crazier, just be like, hey, it's a big spoil.
Now listen,
Yeah.
I had to leave TikTok for a week because there was this guy who kept saying, "This is my take on on Secret Project 1." And I was like, "Oh, it's that Jake Dietz again." And I just have to flip
Now
up.
listen, I have released 2 reviews of Secret Project 1. I think
It's
officially we can
announced
call
now.
it Tress. Yeah, it's like advertised on the Dragonsteel website. And I feel like I've done 2 reviews so far. I've got to get the third one up tonight. The first 2 have 0 spoilers and minimal spoilers. The first one was literally, I said, I read this book. This is my rating out of 5 stars. That's it. So if that's a spoiler, I'm sorry. My kids are dying. It's fine. If you can hear them through the microphone, I apologize.
They're probably mad because you keep spoiling things for them.
Every time they turn on a movie that I've seen, I'm like, oh yeah, by the way, this is who the bad guy is, or this is the big plot twist. They love it. It's their favorite.
So I know that with spoilers, I struggle a bit to do that. I am not going to spoil any of those major things that Jake just said. So yeah, and if I do, we've got recorded evidence of this that you can take me to court. But I very much feel, and I feel like this is true for most media, but especially Brandon Sanderson stuff, because there's so much that has not been revealed yet. It's all just kind of all about the journey anyway, not about the destination, because we're not there yet. So
Did you just say journey before destination? I really appreciate that.
I'm glad you picked that up right there.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, I agree. Like we haven't gotten to the major stuff yet. And it really is about reading those books and experiencing those books, even if you hear a spoiler here or there. Like I agree, because it's such a big story and there's so much going on. Even if we spoiled everything in the Lost Metal, we wouldn't spoil anything major for the Cosmere as a whole, I think.
For
Just because
sure.
we're not there yet.
For sure. I agree with that.
Go ahead.
I guess just diving right in, Brandon. I'm mirrored, so it's weird to point. Anyways, he and I were smart and listened to Era 2 right before listening to the Lost Metal, right? Didn't you do that, Brandon?
That's exactly what I did, because there was this really smart guy named Blake who's like, I did this and it made it so much better. I'm like, oh, good.
So, Jake,
I
how far apart was your readings?
No, you guys know, that I'm always in the middle of a Sanderson book. Like even when I'm reading other stuff, I'm usually in the middle of the Sanderson book. I finished Bands of Mourning about 3 weeks before
Nice.
Lost Metal came out.
Good.
So it was relatively recent.
So
which I agree was good.
I think the first thing then that I noticed coming off of a recent reread was just the tone of Lost Metal is so different from the other 3 books in Era 2. And so I almost don't even put it in with those books. I feel like it's like Era 1 with the 3, Era 2 with the 3, and then the Lost Metal is kind of like its own transitional book. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
I think it just goes to show the growth that happens to an author when they write a lot.
Yeah.
Because not to say that obviously Brandon Sanderson was a good author in Era 2, but he's consistent, and so he's consistently getting better. And I felt like the Lost Metal had more development for the characters outside of Wax, because first 2 were about Wax, and the last one was about everybody. Everybody had an arc in that one, where everyone had a story in the rest of Era 2, but the real growth and arcs I felt like happened in the Lost Metal.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I came out of Lost Metal really appreciating a lot of the side characters more than I had in the previous 3 books. Not that I didn't appreciate them. Please don't leave it like a hate comment, like, "Oh, you hate." No, I love the characters.
Jake doesn't like Brandon Sanderson at all. All of his comments, he's just always negative towards Mistborn. Always.
I know. I feel like I'm just I'm overly negative, and I'm sorry. But I feel like because of what you're saying, Brandon, where they had each of their own story arcs and their own development, I came out of this appreciating it a lot more. And I mean, there were a couple of characters. Steris is one that she was fine, but after this, I'm like, she's awesome. She's just awesome.
My opinion of Steris in the first of Era 2. How are we going to keep this all straight? Era 2 1. What book was that one called? Alloy of Law?
Alloy of Law.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't stand her. She drove me insane. She was like one of my least favorite characters. And by the end, I'm like, oh my gosh, you're so cool. Like, I love everything about her and everything she brings to the table. And it's one of his best examples of like character building, I think, because she really does start to recognize her flaws are her biggest strengths. And I really like that aspect of her in this book.
Yeah. Well, it also goes to show with her something that I tell people all the time. You know, we're nerds here, we're geeks, it's the Age of Geek Media podcast. And I married a normie, somebody who could care less about superheroes. My podcasting career started when I told her some Marvel news one day, and some casting news, and she literally looked at me and said, "I do not care about it. Go find somebody else to tell all of this to," because it was probably in the height of my like, "Oh, this is cool. You got to check this out. You got to here's the news on this. Here's the news on that." And she's like, "No, you got to go tell somebody else." So I grabbed some other people and we started a podcast because that's what you did 10 years ago. But her strengths are in areas that are completely different than mine, which means as a couple, we are able to do some pretty incredible things. And it's nothing that I could have done on my own. It's nothing that she could have done on her own. It's only together that we have that strength. And I know that sounds kind of almost hippie, but people have different strengths and different weaknesses. And when you partner those opposites up, if they can match in the right ways, then in all the other ways, they just strengthen each other.
Yeah. I agree. My wife, by the way, Brandon, was also a normie, but I've been able to kind of convert her a little bit, not all the way, but she, unfortunately, she didn't have the idea to tell me to go tell somebody who cared. She just listened and then eventually kind of gave in, and and here we are. But I really feel like, and I think you both mentioned this, that she really starts to see her weaknesses, Steris does, as strengths in this book. And I love that so much because I think so many of us feel like those things that make us different and those things that uh, make us unique make us weird, and that it's a bad thing to be weird and different. But the reality is that is what makes us stand out. And if we can find a way to utilize those and tap into those quirks, uniquities, yeah, we'll call them uniquities, that's fine, that it can be a benefit, and we can really excel at some things. And she kind of picks up on that in this book, and I think that that's really great to see where she's come from in the first book to now. I think has been awesome. And another character that we get to see a lot of in this is Wayne, who I've always loved Wayne. But in this, we get to see a little bit more of the inner workings of Wayne, and I found that fascinating.
So Wayne is my favorite character of all the Sandersons that I've ever read. He's like my number one dude. And
yeah,
again, without spoiling, I found myself wanting to be like, can I just give him a hug? Like
yeah,
I just wanted to reach to the book and hold him and be like, everything's going to be okay, Wayne. Like, you'll be okay. And it was kind of interesting. I wanted him to have a moment in this where, and again, I guess could be spoilery for his other series, but there's a moment in, oh gosh, I don't even remember which book it is, but Kaladin's at his weakest point, and he's talking to Hoyd, and Hoyd gives him a moment of comfort, essentially.
Mhm.
And I was waiting for that kind of moment to happen for Wayne in this book. And it never really happens, but it's so fitting for him as a character that I was like, by the end I was like, oh no, like he didn't need to have that, you know. He is
Yeah.
so quirky in and of himself that that wouldn't have been the right thing to do for him. And it was kind of a cool realization at the end to have all the things that do happen to him over the course of the book, to have him end up in a place where he is still, I guess you could say, happy. I don't know. I don't know if he's happy, but
Mhm.
he's proud of his
Yeah.
accomplishments. You could say that.
I liked how with that how Brandon Sanderson is just so good at seeing people. And I'm not talking about like, his
Mhm.
characters that he's writing, but his audience. When he writes a character, like, okay, so I've seen some complaints that some of his protagonists uh, can hit the same notes over and over and over again, but that's because it's the hero's journey, in my
Mhm.
opinion. But each of his characters, they, they feel like they're from different communities and that they are
Mhm.
from different and they represent different parts of his fan base. And so some people in his audience, in his fan base, will never have somebody go up there and give him a moment of comfort.
Yeah.
And and his readers uh can feel that through them. They can empathize with him, and that can and I feel like that moment kind of can bring somebody who's like, I wish I could just have a hug. Like, I hope they have a hug. But if, somebody's like, I never am the guy who gets comforted. Well, you know what?
Mhm.
There's this really cool character in the Mistborn Era 2 books who he's kind of the same way. He's like me. And so I really like seeing that. You see that with all of the different characters that Sanderson does is he sees people. And that's great and it's awesome. And it shows just how conscious he is of the people and the world around him.
Yeah, I really felt like I could identify a little bit with Wayne. Not on the details, but on the feelings.
You can
Um,
slow down time.
I can sometimes.
I had no idea.
Usually it happens, it happens, like, if I'm someplace boring, I feel like I've slowed
Yeah.
down time because it just lasts forever and ever. Like a meeting at work or something, I'm like, "This meeting needs to end, so I'm gonna slow down time." That's how it happens for me. No, but Wayne is one of those people that no matter what he does, he feels like he's irredeemable. He feels like he is an awful person no matter how much good he does. And sometimes, I mean, I don't necessarily see this, but my wife has pointed out that there have been many times where I'm a little bit harder on myself than I should be. And I feel like I'm exactly as hard on myself as I should be, and maybe a little bit soft and I should be harder, you know? And Wayne is very much like that. So for me, there were moments where I'm like, I can see myself doing some of these things internally to myself, and maybe that's not a good thing and I should try to be better and kinder to myself.
That was definitely one of my favorite moments in the story. And I can't remember her name, but he goes and he visits that girl to give her money every month. It's every
Yes.
month. And and
Yeah, it's every
and
month.
and he's doing it because he killed, as he says it, he goes, I killed her daddy, you know. And he's like,
Yeah.
I have to do this to redeem myself. And I won't say the conclusion that he gets to, but he gets to a conclusion about why he's doing that. And it's one of the most beautiful things that Sanderson's written, in my opinion. And the
Mhm.
conclusion that he comes to is so real and raw and powerful. And I don't know, I just really appreciated that. And kind of like you were
I'm
just saying, as a reader, I could really identify with that, because
Mhm.
there are things that we force ourselves to go through in life that we maybe don't necessarily have to do, and we just need to be introspective enough to realize what we're doing, why we're doing the things that we're doing.
Yeah. And as you were even describing that moment, I was getting goosebumps. Like, I
Hmm.
was like, yeah, because it was a powerful moment, in the story. Um, so I think the character work in this book is really strong, and it makes me think Blake, we need to go back on our first book takes episode where we put him firmly as a world builder and not a character builder, because I think this is some of the best character work I've read in a fantasy book in a long time.
He's getting better. I'll give him that.
That's what
He
happens
gets
when
my
you write
stamp.
so often.
He gets my stamp of approval of improvement.
Yeah, and you're right, Brandon. That's what you get for writing so often. But also, what I like about Sanderson is he writes so often and realizes he's not perfect at writing, so he's always looking to improve, and that's pretty impressive.
Listen,
So
if he's got some spare moments to write, I know he doesn't do it a lot, but there was the subplot from that about Wayne and his subplot. I'm not going to say anymore because it's just a lot of fun there. He sets a couple people on tasks that they have to go accomplish
That's
in this
right.
book.
That's right.
And
They're so satisfying.
I would love a bunch of novellas about
yes,
these two people accomplishing these tasks one at a time. I just would love to see, how that turned out and what the crazy tasks were.
yep, I would love to read that too. Um, I don't know how much time he has to do it. Unfortunately, he
It's his
probably
next
does. He's probably
Kickstarter,
got them
probably.
done. Yeah, he's got like the secret novellas of these two individuals ready to go. He's going to tell us he's been lying to us all this time again. Um, yeah, I was impressed with the characters in this book, and the whole time I was thinking about our first episode, and I thought, I don't know, he's undoing it. He's going in the other direction, and I am scared because now he's working on Stormlight 5, and I'm pretty sure I'm not going to make it emotionally through that one.
Okay, do you want me to undo that concern about that? Not
Yes.
necessarily about the emotional, because you're going to get emotional. I don't know what the story
Yeah.
is, but I know you will. Just because it's you and Sanderson, and it'll be a moment.
It'll be a moment for sure.
But I don't know that he's world building now. I think he's finished his world building almost. Like, yes, he's giving us new stuff in the Cosmere, but this was the most off-putting thing about the Lost Metal for me. It is less of a story of itself and of using the previous era as the legends and the lore, and more connected to the Cosmere. And so it's bringing in people who he's described in other books. So he doesn't have to explain all of these different ways that the Cosmere works. You're just kind of expected at this point. Well, if you're reading this book,
If
you've
you're
read
reading Lost
everything
Metal,
else.
yeah, and
So
that's a
he's
good
done
point.
all world building, and he's got a pretty good system set up for his world, which I'm sure he'll explain a little bit more in the future because he's left out too many things still. But all of the other books, I felt like he was describing the world.
Yeah,
And this one, it just felt like he was saying, hey, remember that thing that I already described to you? That's this thing right here. And
yeah,
so it offered him the opportunity to develop characters more than spend time building the world. So,
yeah. That's a great point.
so I think there's still a balance, but he maybe can do both. He's an all around good author or something.
Yeah. Well, I just know. Yeah, my concern with Stormlight 5 and why it will be emotional is because he's wrapping up that story, because this is the final story in this era of Stormlight. And that means it's going to be the end of Dalinar's story. It's going to be the end of Kaladin's story. It's going to be the end of Shallan's story, Yasna, Adolin. And I'm just thinking it's going to be hard. After reading this one, it's going to be hard. So, but we'll see. We'll see. I saw a TikTok the other day where somebody mentioned that there's only been a couple of even kind of major character deaths in Stormlight Archive, and that's a really low percentage for Sanderson. But I honestly, I don't think it is. When this book wrapped up, Lost Metal, it was emotional, it was great, but we still got, I felt like, a satisfying ending.
I would agree with that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say the ending is good. It left more questions in the end than it answered, but that's because it's in the middle of a series essentially. But
Yeah.
the story of Wax and Wayne, I felt like had a good ending.
Yeah. I think so, and we get a little bit more in depth with Sazed or Harmony at this point, and Kelsier, who we've seen in Secret History and some of their interactions, and we get a little bit more of that in this. That, like you mentioned, Brandon, this is part of the Cosmere, and it's peeling away more and more at the whole story, and it's starting to come in to the picture a little bit more.
I didn't know we could say Kelsier. I thought that was going to be like,
Really?
yeah.
I don't know. I felt like after Secret History, we could say Kelsier.
All right, that's cool.
Yeah, there's Secret History, and then there was one of the Stormlight books that pretty much it didn't use Kelsier's name, but used a couple names that were like, oh, that's Kelsier.
Yeah. So, okay, since we're on to Kelsier, then I'm just going to dive in.
Yes.
He's a bad guy. He is a villain. He's a bad guy, and I don't trust him. I don't care what you say, Jake.
No, I'm not going to totally disagree. I think he's accidentally a bad guy. I think his motives in his mind are good, but he's a bad guy. Yeah.
So in D&D terms,
very interested to see where he's going with him. So for sure,
I think I would put him at chaotic good in D&D terms.
Really? So I would put him. I would put him at lawful evil.
No, there's nothing lawful about Kelsier.
No. So he doesn't follow the law; he follows his law.
His law,
and the things that he's got some sort of a code for himself and for his crew that they follow that code and they follow his rules. He's not. I don't know that he's chaotic, with the exception of chaotic things happen around him, and he applies his morals to them, because ever since we've met Kelsier, it's always been about Kelsier's morals, and
That's
who
true.
cares what the other rules are. These are my rules, and these are the rules we're going to follow.
Okay, if he's lawful evil, and if they're opposites, then I'm going to say, and this is not a spoiler for Lost Metal, I'm going to say Hoid is chaotic good.
I could go with that.
Lawful evil.
Definitely.
Hoid is chaotic good.
Yes.
Because I know
Hoid is kind of the opposite end of the pendulum. I would totally agree with that.
Because I know there's at one point in Stormlight Archive where he's talking to someone. He says, "I'm going to help you," and man, this makes it sound like I'm not as deep dive as some of the people that you'll see on the internet, and I know that. But he's talking to someone. And he's like, "I'm going to help you now because for now, our motives align."
Yeah,
and he's got his own thing going on, but I think he's good. I think.
Yeah, I hope he's good.
If he's not, I'm going to be really sad.
He's somebody that I don't think you want to be on his bad side, for sure.
No, you don't want to be on the opposite side of Hoid.
That's a bad bet to take.
That's true.
What's his name? It's not Hoid in Stormlight. What is it? Wit. Yeah.
And this is totally off topic of Lost Metal, but I love that he's called Wit because he's the king's wit, because the king needs someone to go around and insult people for him, and that is what he does. And I love that whole premise of who Hoid is in Stormlight Archive. Also, I absolutely ship him and Yasna, and I don't care what anybody says.
Oh, gross. You're so wrong. Gross.
Oh, that would be...
That gives me the ick. Blech.
What are you talking about?
It just blew up my brain. Like, imagining... This is the same thing that we were just talking about with relationships, right?
Okay.
Sometimes your different strengths they strengthen each other, right? Because Yasna and Hoid, they at first glance they don't go together, but I'm okay with that. Like,
I don't think there's anybody else in the Cosmere that matches Hoid's intellect and his wit and his whatever than Yasna does.
Okay, so if Wayne is my number one, she's my least favorite character in the whole.
Wow!
In all of his writing.
Hot take. That is a hot take.
So that'll have to be for another night, and we'll go into a deep dive as the
I
head
Ranking the
reader.
love
characters from the
Yasna.
Cosmere.
I love Yasna.
She has a
She's one of my
whole
favorite.
section. She has a whole section where she's explaining to Dalinar why hope is bad.
No, that's not what she's doing, Blake.
That's what
but it's
she
fine.
does.
No. Okay. We will talk about Yasna another day, but yeah,
I
we
think
should
both
we
of you
should
broke
do
my brain. Like I
yeah,
just I had this Yasna conversation. I'm gonna just have to listen to that later.
I thought the Yasna Wit thing was pretty out in the open. Like I thought everybody knew that that was a ship that was out there. No?
No, I
Is this
hate
my
it.
own headcanon? Okay.
I don't spend a ton of time in the fan forums. Like I'll go to the
No, yeah.
Coppermind and like I will be in the Cosmere Reddit sometimes, but I don't I don't know. I'm not into the whole shipping thing.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Back to Lost Metal. What do you guys give it out of 10? I give it 8.5.
I'll give it a 7 out of 10. 7.5.
Wow. Yeah, I'm probably right in that 8 range as well. There was a lot that I really loved about it. I will say that somewhere in all of the character stories and everything, the overall plot gets lost and meanders and uh wasn't his most coherent plot, but um overall it was still an enjoyable read.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, there was some Deus Ex Machina stuff in there that I was like, I guess they've got to accomplish this somehow. We'll let them.
yeah. And I guess too when you're trying to tie up all of the loose ends, then you've got to do that and sometimes that can be messy. So the Sanderlanche in this one starts about halfway through the book and then just doesn't stop until the end.
And
So,
I'm totally okay with that.
yeah. So that was Lost Metal. That's how we ended 2022 with Sanderson. Now we come into 2023. Secret Project 1 becomes available. Tress of the Emerald Sea. It's out there. January 1st, you could download the ebook if you were a backer, and you could also download the audiobook. But about 2 weeks before it all dropped, he let us all know you'll be able to read the ebook wherever you read ebooks. So if you read it on Kindle, you read it on Nook, whatever, you can read the ebook because they're going to give it to you as an EPUB file. But the audiobook was not going to be available on Audible. And the whole Sanderson fandom went, what did you guys think about that announcement?
I had lots of mixed feelings because that's how I read books. Very rarely do I get the actual book, whether hardcover or just like a book. And I guess I don't know, maybe I'm part of the problem in that I've bought into the monopoly that is Audible. You know, I didn't even know Spotify had audiobooks till
I
he
didn't know
brought
that
this
either.
up. And so
Well, it's because the Audible's monopoly. Like
yeah.
it really, you can't sell on there unless you are an established author.
Yeah. And so in a way, I think it's good that he's bringing light to it and that he's trying to create change and create an environment where everybody can come to the table and participate at the same level. But I kind of, as I was reading his statement, I kind of was just like, well, should I just not read things on Audible? Like, I don't know how I, as a listener, am supposed to help him with his cause.
Yeah. It was interesting as I've been on TikTok over the last few days. There's an indie author on there, and his name is escaping me now, but he writes fantasy. And he's got one fantasy book out there. He wants to have a huge series of like 10 fantasy books. And he was getting ready to get his first audiobook out there, and he was looking at doing an Audible exclusive deal. And then Brandon Sanderson made his announcement. He's like, so should I not go on Audible because they don't treat the author? And he's like, and it's true, they're not going to pay me a lot. But, and this is where I think we have to be careful. I think Sanderson can do this because he has the sway and the power to do it. He knows that his fans at this point, like, look, he said that day. I went and I downloaded Speechify, set up an account there, and thought I'm going to try it on Speechify. This is a cool. I like what their app does in that it enables you to read any text, and I think that's a great thing for people that struggle with reading. So I'm on board with it. Plus, you can also have one of the voices be Snoop Dogg, so Snoop Dogg can read your textbook for you and things like that. Like, that's cool and that's fun. Gwyneth Paltrow is also one of the voices. Uh, that's less exciting for me, but there you go. And so I went and I got Speechify, and Sanderson can do that. A lot of the indie authors, if you're questioning whether or not to put your book on Audible at this point, until that monopoly is broken, I don't know what choice you have,
You
because
have
if
to
you
do
go,
it.
yeah, if you go and put your audiobook on Speechify and you don't put it on Audible, you're not going to get sales. It's just not going to happen.
So, and
And if you
you can do that. You don't have to be exclusive to audio, but then they just cut the rates, the royalty rates,
right,
like crazy. And what they don't tell you is most new authors. I don't think I've ever told you guys this, but I've signed up for Audible ACX as a voiceover, as a voice actor, to do that. And there's a couple different kinds of contracts that you can do. There's the where the author pays you per finished hour, and that's the what Michael Kramer gets, right? Like, you don't say,
right,
I'm going to share my royalties with you. It's I'm paying you this, and we're going to publish it because we know you're worth every penny that you ask for.
So Michael Kramer is
right.
paid by the hour.
Paid for finished hour of audio.
So that's why he likes Sanderson books so
Probably,
much.
I would
I would
I would
imagine.
absolutely love that.
Yeah.
But then there's
Want me to do a
also
56-hour book? I'm on board.
there's also a royalty share plan and a royalty share plus, where they pay you a little bit upfront is royalty share plus, and then they split. I think they give, I can't remember what percentage the royalty share plus is, but just regular royalty share, you get a chunk of that as well. And so
Hmm.
if your book is $10 and you're not Audible exclusive and you're a new author, and that turns into a 20 or a 40%, 30% royalty to you. You then have to split that again with your narrator and so you're making pennies. You're making
Yeah.
uh $2 per book instead of $7 per book if you do it on Speechify. And so all of this is really difficult because you have to factor in, you have to pay not just the author, but a lot of times for newer indie books, the narrator as well.
Yeah. And that's where it's rough. But then the flip side of that is, if you're an author and you go on Speechify and you don't do Audible exclusive, and you're on Speechify, you're the number of copies of your audiobook that you're going to sell and get, the number of eyes that it's going to get in front of, is so much smaller, that even though you're only making $2 per book on Audible, you're going to sell so many more that the thought and the hope is that you're going to make more money than if you go another route. And
Especially
that's
because
the problem.
Speechify is iOS only right now. It is also
Right.
US only right now. And
Right.
so you're not reaching Canada, you're not reaching any international market. And that's an issue for authors because their user base just isn't there. And you know that their user base isn't there because they offered to give Brandon Sanderson 100% of the sale. And
Yeah.
they were doing that because they're like, it's Brandon Sanderson. We know it's going to get people onto our platform.
Right. And kudos to him for saying, well, hold on, is this the same deal that you would give any other author? And they
Right.
said, no, we'd probably offer this. Okay, that's what I'll take. And it was less. I think it was like, what, 70-30 or something like that,
Yeah,
instead of
70-30,
100%.
which is pretty standard. And then also
Yeah.
he said that he got the rights to disclose how much
Right.
the split was, because Spotify, we have no idea if Spotify is keeping a penny from that because their NDA won't let him divulge that information.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting though that he's allowed to divulge what Audible says. Then I
Well,
don't know. Maybe
Audible's is
maybe that's
public.
just maybe
Yeah.
that's just
Audible.
common.
Yeah. I think it is. And they're so big that they probably just have a standard, this is what it is, and that's why
Yeah.
it's public and out there for people to know. Uh, but yeah, it's interesting. I think it's really hard. It's similar to as we do a podcast, uh, when we had Stolen Droids and Zoner was more on there with us, he was a big anti-Apple guy. He was not a big fan of Apple products, of Apple in general, but he recognized if we want our podcasts out there, it's got to be on Apple because that of and that's changing with time. Like I think people are listening to podcasts in a lot of different ways now, but for a while, like if you wanted your podcast, you had to put it on Apple. And I feel like Audible is similar in that way.
Yeah, but and it's not just the uh Audible part of it. The Kindle Unlimited part is also a very, very uh dominated market by Amazon. There are
Mhm.
authors. Uh, there's a website that I go to a lot called Royal Road, where authors will write web novels, essentially, chapter a week, 2 chapters a week, something like that, and they publish them. And then once they get the whole book done, they they usually just say, okay, we're going to put what we call a stub page, because Amazon doesn't let us, if we put something in Kindle Unlimited where we get paid per page read, Amazon doesn't let us publish it anywhere else. And they can
Mm,
do that because they're the gorilla in the room, right? Like
right.
you can't fight them as a small indie author. Now, the number one Kickstarter for all time, you can fight them. But
Yeah.
I see
I
it
mean,
was hard for me because I've got over 300 books in my Audible library.
right.
I love Audible. I've been there for over 10 years. It is my commute. It is everything, right? I've spent a lot of money to have those books in my library. And this is the first time that I'm like, okay, I need to figure out how to listen to an audiobook not on Audible, on my phone. And I almost think this is going to start a wave, not maybe not a wave, but it's going to get people starting to pirate audiobooks, because
Mm,
convenience trumps fidelity every single
Interesting.
time. And if
yeah.
it's easier to pirate it than it is to go figure out which service it's on, somebody's just gonna go pirate it.
So I guess
Yeah.
that leads to the next question. Do you guys think this is gonna work? I don't know. I think Sanderson is a big enough name to put a dent in things, but I definitely don't think he is enough to break Audible. You know,
No,
he's gonna need a lot more authors to jump ship with him.
yeah. And there have been other services. So I don't know. I don't know if it's going to work or not. But there have been other services that have gone out there and tried to compete with Audible. And hey, Audible charges you this much, and you can only get one new book a month, and whatever we charge less, and you can listen to all of our library. I think that was like I can't remember which one that was. Um,
I remember the service, but they went under, and just after they
yeah,
went under, Audible released their Plus catalog.
Oh gosh.
yeah, yeah, and and so there have been others that have tried. I think what makes this different and what you have to do is have an author who's willing to not just say I'll come over to Speechify, but I'll come over and make it exclusive to this site or semi-exclusive to these two sites, um, and not allow it to be on Audible because there was nothing that was offered by this other service that wasn't on Audible. So there's nothing that I said I have to read this book and it's only available over here. I have to read this book. It's available on Audible, so that's great. They've got this cute little service, but I trust Audible. I know it's there. I know it's going to work.
I know it's
Now
going to
I
be
had to go
around in
try
5 years.
exactly, and I went and I listened to Tress on Speechify, knowing full well that it may have bugs, it may have glitches, it may not be able to handle the traffic that might be coming to it as of January 1st. All of those things because I was willing to do that because that's where I had to go to get the book. Also, I tried to figure out how to get the book in Spotify and I couldn't, so it was Speechify for me.
And
That's ultimately the
how
deciding
was your
factor.
experience? Was it any different than Audible or?
It was everything I expected it to be as far as the service went. Like, I could move ahead in chapters, I could change the reading speed. It was Michael Kramer's voice, which is all I really need at night anyway. Um, it was all the things that I needed. Like, I didn't have any issues with it. I heard of others who, like, initially had um, some struggles with the download and some struggles connecting. It I tried to download it at midnight or around midnight on the first. Um, I mean, it was basically kiss my wife, Happy New Year, and then download Sanderson. That's kind of how my New Year's went. But it struggled because I think everybody was getting on there doing the same thing. But the next morning, once I actually started listening to the book, I didn't have any issues. So
I'll tell you, Jake, and this is not going to be a surprise to you, in what the result is going to be. But the Japanese have a tradition that the things that you do on New Year's Day are the things that you will be doing for the rest of the year. So you're saying you spent a good chunk of New Year's Day listening to Sanderson, right?
yep.
So year 2023, Year of Sanderson is pretty apt for you according to Japanese tradition.
And I'm fine with that. And that to me could even just be self-fulfilling prophecy, honestly. Like, oh, well, I guess Japanese culture says I need to do this. I'm just going all in. I
I mean, honey,
all
I
right, can't
have
help it.
to.
Yeah, I can't help it, dear. This is what I have to do. All of a sudden, trying to get some of those leather-bound books is sounding much more doable, like necessary almost this year. So, but yeah, that's been my
Who are some
experience.
other authors, or what are some other books that you would think would need to jump ship as well? I mean, like, if George R. Martin finally finished his book and was like, guess what? It's not on Audible. I think that would, like, the world would explode. Like, I think we'd
Yeah,
need, or like a new Harry Potter on it, or I don't know.
if Rothfuss finally finishes the third King Killer Chronicle book and says, "But guess what? It's only on Speechify,"
I
that
could see
would
him doing
probably
that.
I could too see him doing something like, "Okay, it's finally finished, but you can't get it on Audible."
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
it go ahead,
oh,
sorry.
sorry, I was just gonna say that's. I don't think that there is a single author that could destroy the Audible monopoly,
Yeah,
because 10 years ago, like, I don't even think I don't even think a handful of authors could do that. 10 years ago, Audible was full of sci-fi, fantasy, nerdy books. Audible
Yep,
was built on the back of
it was
nerds.
glorious.
It was great. Every single book that was in there, I could just scroll through the library. I'm like, that looks cool. And
Yeah,
now that's why I've got 300 plus books in there, right? Where now the recommendations, the daily deals that they send me in my email and stuff like that, it is not it's not the kinds of books that I'm interested in. They're
no,
books for normal people because
yeah,
it's become for normal people.
well, and I think the big thing, and, um I know Sanderson talked about, like, the bestseller lists on a couple of his videos ago on his, YouTube channel, and or maybe it was on TikTok, I don't know, but he broke it down and he kinda said, we're number 1 bestseller in fantasy, New York Times bestseller list, but that doesn't even compare to the nonfiction stuff, and that's what a lot of Audible is right now, is a lot of nonfiction, and the normies that I talk to, that's what they listen to, is
right.
the nonfiction stuff, and the hard thing there is you don't have a Brandon Sanderson in nonfiction, because
Mm-mm.
the nonfiction is gonna be, Bob Iger's book, and it's gonna be Prince Harry's tell-all, and those are all, one book that the author is writing or maybe 2, but you don't have a Sanderson out there that, like, every time that nonfiction book comes out, everybody's jumping to go get it, because that's just not how nonfiction works compared to
It would
fiction.
need to be the publisher. The publishing
Yeah, it
house
would need to be a publisher.
would have to say, "We're doing this." And the hard thing about that is they are shooting themselves in the foot money-wise, and so if they're a
Yeah,
publicly traded company, their shareholders probably will not be happy with the results, and so they're just
right.
not going to do it.
Yeah, no, yeah, Random House isn't gonna come in and be like, "You know what? We're not gonna do anything on Audible anymore because, yeah, everybody's gonna throw a fit." And they're never gonna do anything that's gonna lose them money on purpose. So,
You know what I got in
but
my email, though, the other day from Audible that I've never gotten before? a $10 coupon.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Interesting.
And so I'm not saying Brandon Sanderson has them scared, but maybe they're trying to gain a little bit more goodwill with, maybe they're like, oh, his books algorithmically, he's got like all of the Sanderson books. Yeah, we should probably slip him a coupon to make sure he stays happy with us.
Has
Yeah,
Audible made a statement or responded at all in any way? I haven't heard anything. So
I haven't heard anything from them either. And I think ultimately that's what he's trying to do is he understands that if there's competition and an actual place for these authors to go that's not Audible, that makes it worth it to not be exclusive with Audible, then that's going to make Audible have to change their practice. And I don't think he's trying to take Audible down. I think he's just trying to get them to be more equitable with the authors that they work with. But they're not going to do that until they start seeing money
right,
and start losing money.
He's
And
playing
right.
third party politics right now. He's
yeah,
like, I don't expect to win the election, but I expect somebody to pick up my position.
yeah, right.
I
But
think it's I
we'll
do
see
think
if it
it's
works.
interesting when I was reading his statement when he said he said I've got it pulled up here and he says I didn't realize or he says I knew it was bad but I didn't realize it was this bad or how bad it was for indie
Mhm.
authors. Um so part of me wonders if he's doing this, obviously he's doing this to shed light on it for us normies that aren't in the
Mhm.
know. I mean, Brandon, you know way more about it than I do. Um, so I thought that was really interesting to have, the curtain kind of pulled back. But I'm
Yeah.
also surprised that he didn't know it was this bad.
Well, it's
And
because Tor
and
takes care of it.
yeah,
Yeah, exactly. All of
and
his stuff has been and that's on Audible has been through Tor. So,
yeah,
And maybe that's why Audible's not saying anything, because
right,
they know at the end of the day, after these 4 books, he's all of his other stuff's going to be there on Audible because it's coming through Tor.
yeah. And
yeah.
so again, if he's really, I don't want to say yes to put his money where his mouth is, but like is this going to be that impactful of a thing? I guess how big of an impact do you think he wants to have? Does he want Audible to make it 70%? Does he want I don't know. I'm appreciative
Mhm.
of him doing it. I think it's cool that he's
Sure.
doing it. He's looking out for the little guy. But in the long run, I don't see how this is going to have an impact. It's like in the Bowser, it's like in the Mario trailer when the penguins are throwing the snowballs at Bowser.
Yes.
Bowser is Audible and he's the Penguins. And I'm like,
Yeah.
dude, you're not doing anything, man. Like, make it
Yeah.
better change somehow. So I don't know.
And I think that's what makes it hard. I think you're right. I don't know that it's really going to have a huge impact, and I don't know that he's planning on it having a huge impact. I think for me, what I sit and I try to figure out and I try to contemplate, and I don't know, is it feels like he's doing this from a really good place. Like he really wants to be helpful. He really wants to make a difference, and he's really hoping to make a difference. But it could also be that, man, he looks really good trying to make a difference. He looks really good trying to do this, knowing that it's not really going to have a big impact, but he can say, well, I've done everything that I can. And I really hope that that's not the case, that he really is trying to make an impact. But I think either way, I think you're right, Blake. He's a penguin throwing snowballs at Bowser.
Now, I
That's a
will
really good
say, and this
analogy.
is partially because I'm a big fan of his, so I know that I've got some
Right.
rookie-colored glasses here, but the few interactions that I have had with Brandon Sanderson, he is like the most genuine guy in the world. I mean, he's practical. He says it all the time. Being the son of the accountant makes him practical, right? Uh,
Right.
but but he cares about people. He wouldn't write
Yeah.
the way that he writes, where we already talked about how he sees people if he didn't care about people. But this, okay, so he was at FanX. I work at FanX, and I had a book that I wanted to get signed for my kids, and it was Cytonic. They're big fans of that series, so I got Cytonic signed for them. But I couldn't get to the table at the time to get the tickets, because he does a ticketing system to sign books,
Right.
and they were gone within minutes because he's Brandon Sanderson. And so I was talking to his social media manager, and she was like, "Oh, your staff, he stays after the show floor ends to sign books for volunteers, staff, and other vendors." And so
Oh, that's cool.
if you're one of them, just when they call the show floor closing, just come. We'll line you guys up here, and we'll go through. And he was doing it, and he was taking as much time as he could with people, to the point where he literally has people whose job it is to be like, "Brandon, we need to go to the next one. Brandon, we need to." So he
Yeah.
had like handlers to make sure that he wasn't there too late, because he could have easily been there for hours. And so knowing that
Yeah.
he's willing to stay late to so that volunteers and staff members and other vendors can get that interaction tells me he's a genuine guy. This isn't
Yeah.
just for show, but he also knows that he's not starting a revolution.
Yeah. I think you're right. That's been my experience too. I've met him a couple of times, also at FanX. I'm not staff, so I don't get all the same special privileges that you do, Brandon. But I do remember one year getting in line, and this was before he did a ticketing system, and they had him set up in one of the panel rooms for the last panel hour of the night, and I got in line towards the beginning, but I was at the end of the line, and he stayed until well after the convention had actually closed to make sure everybody got signed. He didn't speed anybody through. I was able to still get a picture with him. He signed multiple books for me. I try to be conscientious. I try to be conscientious of others and bring like 3 books for him to sign at a time instead of like my whole stack of books. Also, I don't want to carry around a whole stack of books all day at the convention, but you see them, people do that. They will come with a whole stack of books to sign, but he doesn't turn them away, and he's willing to do that kind of stuff. And so he does seem really genuine, and I think he's really genuine in the efforts that he's trying to make. But I think he also knows it's not, this isn't, and he even said in his statement, he's not out to take down Audible. He
Right.
just is hoping to have a conversation and get some change. And maybe that will happen.
Side
We'll
note
see.
to him signing books. Did you see
Yes.
his TikTok where he talked about how he made his signature so that
Yes.
it's ergonomically designed so that he can sign a lot of I was like, how did you know that you would be signing books? Like, I don't know.
That's some powerful, like, self-manifestation,
Yeah.
like,
That's like the
stuff. Like, I
secret,
see
like
it,
throwing that
I'm
under the
gonna,
universe.
yeah. Uh, and that was in response, I think, to Hank or John Green.
Yeah, one of
And
them.
let me just say, if you don't follow those 2 on TikTok, you should, because they're both delightful. I haven't
They
read
are.
any of their books, and I need to, just because I think they're delightful people. So,
That's why they're on TikTok, so that they can get more readers. They they were they were unsuccessful until TikTok.
no, that's not true. Nope. A Fault in Their Stars, by John Green, I think was successful before TikTok was a thing.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
But they were always
So,
mad that they couldn't get Jake to read their books, so they
Yeah.
launched this
they're out
extravagant
there just
social media campaign.
to reach me. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's true.
Well, it worked. I just need to listen to one of their books, probably on Audible.
Oh,
Yeah, and that's the hard thing. I don't, Blake, to your question earlier, like, should we stop listening to Audible? Like, what? And I don't think that that's even doable for me
Right.
at
Right.
this point. So it's hard. I hope there's change. I definitely am in support of, indie authors getting opportunities. And it's an interesting point that we're at with indie authors, because through Kindle and things like that, there are so many more avenues to publish a book nowadays than there used to be. Like, if you want to publish a book, you can. Uh, and and years ago, that wasn't the case. And so those opportunities are there. Um, but just like Amazon does with everything, like, they opened that door and said, "Hey, here's a way to do it." And now that we're the only game in town, we're gonna gouge everybody and take everything we can from it. So,
I mean, it's their business model. I don't know if you've ever looked at the
yeah.
Amazon Associates program for referrals. They started
Mhm.
out with, you have a review website, you send somebody to Amazon and they buy it, and you'll get 10% of whatever they buy for the next week. And then it turned
Right.
into 7%. It's like, okay, that's still not bad. And then 5%. Now it's like certain categories are like 1% of that. And so the bigger they get, the less they have to give.
Yeah. But there's a lot with the affiliate stuff that I don't know. I struggle a little bit with it because I've known people who have those affiliate links that use them completely inappropriately, and so I think that there are other reasons why they've tightened it up because they can, right? They're big enough that they don't need the affiliates anymore, and it's really to help the affiliates out. But I definitely know of companies that have affiliate links that have used it inappropriately. But anyway, like ordered their own stuff through the site or anyway, told their employees to or things like that. So, but
Yeah, there's
but my
there's there's
wife,
definitely shady things there.
yeah, my wife does the affiliate stuff through Amazon. It is a source of income for her that she never really pays attention to, and like every couple of months she might get like a $20 payment that she's like, "Oh, well that's a nice like we can go grab McDonald's or something with that." But she has other sources of income that are much more profitable that she focuses on that instead of the affiliate links through Amazon. So, because it doesn't pay very well. So,
It's a trend
I don't
for
know.
Amazon.
Yeah, that's what they
Do
do.
you think? I know we're wrapping up on timelines, but do you think the 4 secret books will eventually go on Audible?
I
He
think
kind of leaves it
if
open ended, so
yeah, he does. He doesn't say that they're not going to. He says for now, I think is what is the terminology that he uses. For now, they won't be on Audible. I think there is probably something in his contract with Tor and the books that they publish that will probably lead to them ending up on Audible
yeah,
once they're published through Tor.
Because if they don't get on Audible, there's a large chunk of his fan base that will never get the complete part of the Cosmere. And he
Mhm.
introduces some stuff in Tress that is not in other parts of the Cosmere. Like some of
Yep.
the stuff is new. He's hinted at them, but overall it's new. And so can you imagine being somebody who lives in Canada, who I don't know, I've got a little bit of beef with Spotify. So I looked at the book and I'm like, no, I'm not gonna give Spotify any more money for what I am going to listen to. And so yeah, they if I didn't have the other ways to listen to this, I would be so mad that I couldn't get it on Audible.
Yeah. Yeah. I think eventually it will get there. I agree.
yeah,
It's just too big a part of his audience. And he even says that we know that the majority of our audience is audiobook listeners. And we know that they're all through Audible.
yeah. He
And
says the Lost Metal pre-orders were 75% audio, all through Audible. So
yep.
I think I think he's well aware that he's taking a huge cut in doing this.
Well, and what percentage of those are like me where I pre-ordered it in physical form and an audiobook form
Right.
because I knew I wanted a copy of it, but I knew I was going to listen to it instead of read it
Yeah.
because I've come to grips and terms with the fact that I have a book collecting hobby and a book reading hobby and that they are not necessarily the same.
Well,
Right.
So,
let's face it, he can do this simply because he already has Jake's money.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I mean,
it's all about
he
Jake's money. And he
he's
took
made
a
all
lot
this
of it
money,
last year. I'll be
and
honest.
he's comfortable enough that losing those pre-orders is not going to kill him,
Yeah.
because they
Yep.
pre-order, the people who would do the pre-orders paid for the Kickstarter, back to the Kickstarter.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. He does have my money. That's true. Probably last year, I spent more on Brandon Sanderson than I did any of my individual kids. So there you go.
Sorry,
That's
sweetheart. You can't play football this year. I had to buy the hard copy and Audible version of Lost Metal.
You want to do that super fun activity? You want me to miss out on the Year of Sanderson? I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I know we were going to Disneyland this year, but sorry, I've
But
got to have
not
these
anymore.
books.
To be clear, before anybody gets upset or worried, I will say, while that may be true amount-wise, it was not at the cost of any of my kids. They all got what they needed, and they all got to do what they wanted. Trust me, my kids did not suffer because of Sanderson.
One of my favorite things about you, Jake, is when you make an absurd statement, you then still have to clarify that it wasn't real. Like, we all know you love your family.
Okay, well, I just want to make sure.
It's because
his family ever listens to this.
Yeah, his kids are going to listen and be like, "I thought Dad loved us."
Yeah. I'm sure someday they're going to ask that question. He had how many Funko Pops? And he didn't let me do what? Yeah, we're not sure. So there you go. There's our take on the Year of Sanderson. I will say I've finished the first one. I won't give any spoilers, but I enjoyed it. It was good.
It was great. It was.
I didn't know what to expect with these 4 secret projects, how much they were going to tie in. It's like, yeah, it's going to be in the Cosmere, but is it going to be in the Cosmere like Elantris is in the Cosmere, where, yeah, it's there, but it doesn't really tie in with anything else in the Cosmere? But nope.
He's tied. I feel like Elantris is being tied more in.
It is now, but like for a long time, it was kind of just that book that was out there that, I mean, even Warbreaker got a better tie-in up front than Elantris did. So, but yes, it's getting better. Anyway, I enjoyed it. And we'll probably be back soon with more hot takes. And we might even do some book takes that are not related to Sanderson. But I'm not promising anything.
I like the idea of doing a nonfiction. We kind of talked about that by saying Audible now has nonfiction. So we need to do like a nonfiction hot take, like Barack Obama's biography is better than Michelle's biography. Like, I don't know. We gotta do something.
Yeah. I haven't read either of those biographies yet.
I haven't either, but I don't know.
Both of them.
I don't know. We got to do something big.
We can do something, and eventually we've got to do an episode that's more Pierce Brown focused, since he's got a new one coming out this year.
Obviously.
Well, Blake, you and I, we can talk about Skippy the Beer Can.
Exactly. I would love to do that. I actually think, Jake, you would like those books too. We'll talk.
All right. Well, you can find us everywhere that you want to find us. We're all over social media. Also, you can join our Discord where we have delightful conversations. That's my word of the night, delightful. Normies has actually been our word of the night, I think. But Discord, it is www.discord.ageofgeek.com, right?
Yes.
Except I don't think you have to say www anymore. Old people like me still say it, but young people don't say that anymore. So you can join our Discord. We'd love to have you. All geeks welcome there. And if you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, please do so. Please like this video and comment. And if you're listening to the podcast, please follow us on whatever podcast service that you're using. And leave a review if you feel so inclined. That helps others to find us and enjoy our content as well. If you enjoyed our content, leave a review. We'd love it. And yeah, that's all we've got for you tonight. It's, over an hour long. I keep telling us we have to do shorter episodes, and here we are. So anyway, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
This has been an Age of Geek media production.